All right, welcome family to this Juneteenth presentation. I know we're doing it early, but I figured people would be busy this Sunday. We on, I'm here representing the Free Black Society. Our motto, which is from Malcolm X, is, I know we're doing it early, but I figured people would be busy this Sunday. I'm here representing the Free Black Society. Our motto, which is from Malcolm X, is, I know we were doing it early, but I figured people would be busy. Play back, my bad. Yeah, but figured people would be busy this Sunday. It kept going for me. But today we're going to discuss the 13th and 14th Amendment, which I think are the biggest hoaxes played on our people. One, we never had a say-so in them. And two, we never had a say-so in them. We're going to discuss the hidden history of these so-called slaves that was freed on Juneteenth. And we're going to talk about the attitude that was given to them at this time in a climate that was being built. And are we truly free at this moment? The purpose of our society is to establish a solid historical identity of the so-called African American, to teach historical events that led us to our present situation, find remedies to better our situations, and secure a future amongst nations, not just amongst our everyday neighbors, because everybody got a place that they could call home. We're the only people who second class everywhere. It's like no homeland for the African American. Find remedies to better, provide examples throughout history and the present for motivation and inspiration. Any examples we could find, no matter where we get them from. If people was fighting for freedom and it's a blueprint to be made from that, we could use it. Teach what no one will address, or I feel no one will address, and that's self-determination and the identity of the Negro or our people. We went by many names, but at the end of the day, it ain't nothing that we really said it's ours, or it's nothing that was passed down from generation to the generation that's been destroyed. And we want to establish a community through a dual society with respect to the Treaty of 1866. And that's not the only way, but that's a major way, because the Treaty of 1866 is right there for the taking. It sets up the rules and regulations for us to do this, or easy way for us to do this. But Juneteenth, who are those slaves? How did free blacks like my brother to the right, which is a Native American, become a slave like Gordon to the left? All we ever hear about is the Africans side of us who came to America, but we never hear about the people who was already over here, and both played a major role in our bloodlines, whether we accept it or not. It's there. In this presentation, we will go through the history and the situation surrounding the transformation from the free to enslaved people, and to discuss if we were ever freed. This is the supposed origin of our ancestors as slaves in America. Slavery in America began when the first slaves were brought to the North American colony of Jamestown, Virginia. This was supposed to be in 1619. So really, before the Europeans came over here, we really shouldn't see black people over here though, because anything you look up, they talk about these was runaway slaves. So runaway slaves gave rise to indigenous black populations. We really shouldn't see none before 1619, but we really shouldn't see none before 1492 historically. So anything older than 1492 is a problem behind it. Slavery by the numbers. Portugal America, who was one of the first people to enslave our ancestors, actually got the Pope to write documents to give them permission for slavery, like got religious permission to enslave people. But they supposedly had 38% of the slaves that came from Africa. And when we get down to British North America, we get 6.5% of the slaves that were shipped to British North America. This is a listing from the Carolina Gazette. Slaves to be sold, and it was about 250 fine, healthy Negroes. Like when we go at the people who owed us reparation, people who enabled it had to be held responsible too. Because the South Carolina Gazette, whatever they became this day, If they thought it was cool to be a enabler to help people advertise slaves, because that's what they're doing, they promoting it, that mean they support it. We need to hold them responsible too. They should have to give up some currency as well, or free advertisement, or whatever our agreement, how we gonna get back where we need to be. This is one outrageous slave sale. Who knows how many people was really getting sold. This took place March the 2nd to the 3rd in 1859. It was 436 men, women, and children were sold. Like, how in the world can you sell 436 people, man, in 2 days? Like, come on, man. And they be trying to say that such a small percent of white people own slaves. They got to get out of here with that madness. How long was slavery legal in the United States? While under the Constitution, Congress could not regulate the imports of could not regulate the import of the slave trade until 1808. The Third Congress regulated in 1794 by prohibiting the use of ports for shipbuilding and outfitting for the trade, which is weak. Like, oh, you can't build ships. Slavery wouldn't actually be ended into the 13th Amendment, and citizenship wasn't given into the 14th Amendment. But slavery in the United States, back to my original question, lasted from 1776 to 1865. It was legal under the Constitution only between 1776 to 1865 in the United States. And they made up these different ways to keep our ancestors slave and a profit off of it, like the 3/5 Compromise. The 3/5 figure was an outgrowth of a debate that took place between the Continental Congress in 1783, and the Articles of Confederation had appointed taxes not according to the population, but according to land value. And this really helped the South at this time because they was into more agricultural means and everything. And then the weather probably wasn't even as bad as it is. But the 3/5 Compromise, fast forward, it was a direct tax by the slaveholding states to the government. So they was basically getting straight money for slaves. And we could find out how much they was really getting, because we're gonna use the number 3/5. So if we're using that, we only got to find out how much they was really getting. We could probably get a good amount of people, a good account of how many people was enslaved, and basically the wealth of our ancestors. So we can find a way to use that mathematics. But the 3/5 Compromise was very, very important, because a lot of people say it took us from being men and stuff. But if we can find that out, we can really hold the government responsible for the 3/5 Compromise, because the 3/5 Compromise, it also mentioned Indians not taxed in there. So 3/5 of all of the persons, and excluding Indians not taxed. We got to remember, excluding Indians not taxed when they was talking about population, because the 3/5 Compromise was a population count for representatives. But they excluded Indians not taxed because Indians wasn't a part of the politic of the United States, the body politic. Let's move a little forward to the Contraband and Confiscation Act. Contraband was a term commonly used in the United States military during the American Civil War to describe a new status for certain escaped slaves or those who was affiliated with Union forces. The Army and the United States Congress determined that the U.S. would not return escaped slaves who went to Union lines classified as contraband. Remember this word. They came to Union lines and they was contraband. The Confiscation Act, this was between 61 and 64. In U.S. history, series of laws was passed by the federal government during the American Civil War that were designed to liberate slaves in the seceded states. The first Confiscation Act passed August 6, 1861, and authorized Union seizures of rebel property. And it stated that all slaves who fought with or worked with the Confederate services were freed and further obligated to their masters. So remember, confiscated was the act of taking contraband. It's hand in hand. So were we free or were we state properties when we came to the Union lines? With respect to the slaves, the Act authorized courts proceedings to strip the owner of any claim to them, but did not clarify whether these slaves were free. As a result of this ambiguity, these slaves came under Union lines as property in the care of the United States government. Came under Union lines as property. Remember that. Property. In response to this situation, General David Hunter, the Union Army military commander of Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida, issued General Order Number 11 on May 9, 1862, freeing all slaves in the area under his command. Upon hearing Hunter's action, 1 week later, Abraham Lincoln, immediately countermanded the order, then returned the slaves to their former status as property. What? In the care of the federal government. You can't make it up, man. That's your boy Abe Lincoln. They had contraband internment camps, and one of the most famous is one. We've been hearing about these mass killings lately, but we don't talk about the element that was created when these people was free. How many people starved to death? Like how many people died of diseases and stuff? Who was taking care of these people when they left? The Devil's Punch Bowl has a mass grave from 1860. This dude named Westbrook, who co-founded the Delta Paranormal Research, said historians estimate that in 1 year following Union troops' arrival in Natchez, up to 20,000 free slaves died in contraband camps. Like, this gonna be up here so everybody can just go up in there and read that. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be reading a book to everybody, but 20,000 people though, that speaks for itself. Dying in contraband camps. We don't really hear about contraband camps. We hear about the Civil War. We hear about people saying that they fought against each other to free us and all this other jazz, but we don't never hear about no contraband internment camps though. I bring that up. This is a Special Order 15, General Field Order Number 15. On January 16, 1865, during the Civil War, Union General William T. Sherman issued his Special Field Order Number 15, which confiscated as Union property a strip of coastline stretching from Charleston, South Carolina to Florida, or St. Johns River in Florida, including Georgia, Sea Island, and the mainland 30 miles in from the coast. The order redistributed roughly 400,000 acres of land to the newly freed black family, basically the 40 acres and a mule. And everybody's favorite boy gave them their land back. But we're going to get into this. Abraham Lincoln on slavery. This is he was talking to the Honorable Horace Greeley. Move this thing real quick. I have just read yours of the 19th address to myself through the New York Tribune. If there be any statement or assumption of fact which I may know to be erroneous, I do not now or here controvert them. If there be in it any inference which I may believe to be falsely drawn, I do not now and here argue against them. If there be when in it, man, I can't believe I stretched it out like this. I should have just put it on here. It's very hard to read. Impatient, dictatorial tone, I wave in indifference to an old friend whose heart I have always supposed to be right. As to the policy I seem to be pursuing, as you say, I have not meant to leave anyone in doubt. I will save the Union. I will save it in the shortest way under the Constitution. The sooner the national authority can be restored, the nearer the Union will be, the Union as it was. If there be those who would not save the Union unless they could at the same time save slavery, I do not agree with them. If there be those who would not save the Union unless they could at the same time destroy slavery, I do not agree with them. My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union. and it's not either to save or to destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I could do it. And if I could save the Union freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. So basically, man, we going through this. This man Abraham Lincoln ain't no hero. He wasn't about really freeing the slaves. It was a political joke, a game to him. His main concern was the Union of the United States. It wasn't your ancestors being slaves. He didn't feel sorry for them. He didn't get no epiphany, even though he was a biracial himself from the tribe that his mother was a part of. So we get to President Johnson's amnesty. The President of the United States on the 8th day of December AD 1863, on the 26th day of March AD 1864, with the object to suppress the existing rebellion, to induce all persons to return their loyalty and restore the authority to the United States, issue proclamation offering an amnesty important to all persons. So these people who rebelled against the United States got an opportunity to amnesty and got forgiveness from the President of the United States after the Civil War. And all of the land that these people lost was restored to them. All they had to do was take their oath. They had to solemnly swear, and they had to follow about 14 points, and they was forgiven. And all the land given to the slaves under the special order number 15, the 40 acres and a mule that our ancestors got, and the land that they worked was given back to the Confederates, who rebelled, traitors against the United States, rebelled against the United States. They stole land that we cultivated. They set up institutions called the Freedmen Bureau. The Freedmen Bureau was a federal agency formed to aid and protect the newly freed blacks in the South. After the Civil War, established by an act on March 3rd, 1865, under the name the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, it will function for 1 year after the close of the war. A bill exceeding its life indefinitely and greatly increasing its powers was vetoed on February 19, 1866. And 1866 is an important year because that's when we get a treaty with all 5 civilized tribes, the Treaty of 1866. But it was ended by President Andrew Johnson. We got to remember Andrew Johnson. He gave them amnesty so he could forgive the people who enslaved. It's never been about black people, though. This is the name we got to understand. He could forgive the people, traitors, who rebelled against the United States. But organizations that meant to help us, he ain't had no time for it. He ain't got no money for it. But the thing that was interesting about the Freedmen Bureau, though, it was underneath the War Department. And that's what we got to remember. We came to the United States after slavery as refugees underneath the War Department. I just wanted it to sink in for you. But this is the 13th and 14th Amendment, which I call the biggest hoaxes in history. The 13th Amendment, Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude exists as a punishment, should exist itself as a punishment for a crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. And Congress shall have the powers to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. But what's so important, though, the same amendment that freed you, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, enslaved you, except as a punishment for a crime. So they're letting you know, yeah, you free, but we're about to make a bunch of laws against you, which you're going to have no say in. Come on, man. It's been a joke the whole time. And this is the 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state within they reside. No state shall make or enforce any laws which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. So let's get it. Subject to the jurisdiction has never ever in the history of the United States read any law that gave citizenship that said somebody was subject to the jurisdiction of anything. But any person born or naturalized in the United States United States, remember this is the 13th and 14th Amendment, and this is a joke, but the United States is located in the District of Columbia, and you can find this in Uniform Commercial Code 9307, location of debtors. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. So let's reread that. All persons born or naturalized in the District of Columbia and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. Anybody was born or naturalized in the District of Columbia. It never happened to our ancestors. We never signed up for citizenship, and it was forced upon us, and we don't even have no say-so in it. That's the crazy part about it. The Supreme Court decision, Dred Scott versus Sanford, was issued on March 6, 1857, delivered by Chief Justice Roger Taney. This opinion declared that slaves were not citizens of the United States and could not sue in federal court. In addition, this decision declared that Missouri Compromise was unconstitutional and that Congress did not have the authority to prohibit slavery in their territories. The Dred Scott decision was overturned by the 13th and 14th Amendment. Black people, free or slave, could never become U.S. citizens, and they have no right which the white man is bound to respect. Were all blacks brought as slaves? And this is an Algonquian Council tribal meeting in 1920. Scott versus Sanford. Free blacks weren't considered citizens. Where do these free blacks come from, and are they free people? What happened to all of, are they freed people? You got to emphasize that D, because it's the difference between free blacks and freed blacks. Obviously, free blacks was never enslaved. What happened to all those free blacks? Where did they go? And we're going to go over a few eyewitness accounts. So this is basically the second half of my presentation. I gave a little history on, slavery and the different acts that labeled us as property and all that other nonsense that they be trying to hide from us, that they don't want to talk about. It's just equality, equality, equality. How can you just jump into the equality conversations when the field ain't even level? Like, the field already unleveled. You can't play Monopoly where somebody got the whole board and they say, okay, we equals now. It just don't make sense. But they said the earliest slaves was in 1619 in the U.S. We're gonna give them 1492 when Columbus came over here. Let's say he had black people with him, according to their story. Why black people over here? But this is Lucia. Dozens of skeletons have emerged from cave in where is it said Lagoa Santa in eastern Brazil. But one in particular has recently caused a stir, and she's 25 years old. She's named after Lucy, an African fossil who lived 3.2 million years ago, and it's the oldest skeletal remains in ancient America at 11,500 years old. Lucia died in her early 20s. I wanted to call her Lucy. Lucia died in her early 20s. So she was preserved. Found out she's 11,000, 12,000 years old. The anatomy of her skull and teeth, including a narrow oval cranium, projecting face, and pronounced chin, likens Lucia to Africans and Australasians. Australoids, that's what I'd be running with. And this is how she looked. Richard Nives of Manchester U, who undertook a facial reconstruction of Lucia, described it as Negroid. And this is how they reconstructed her face. They didn't have to put it like that. How did our sister get over here, though? They never even tell you about it, though. That's the thing that's a slap in the face. You never even hear about it. This is basically the same thing, just talking about Lucia and migration patterns. But I'm going to skip that for right now. We got time. I'll go back to it. It's just a lot. And this is the Bering Strait theory. According to the Bering Strait migration theory, the people known as American Indians originated in Asia and wandered into the Western Hemisphere by way of a land bridge that once joined the eastern reaches of Siberia to western Alaska. Archaeologists long thought that the first Americans were Clovis people, who are said to have reached the New World some 13,000 years ago. in Brazil, and black. So they would have walked all the way down into America and would have had to go all the way down there to build their oldest civilizations and to leave their oldest remains. It's just illogical. It don't even matter if it don't make sense. They don't care. This is the origin of white skin. People in Europe may have only developed pale skin within the last 5,000 years. Let's say 6,000 years. Let's give 6,000 years. According to new research, scientists believe that the sudden change in the diet around that time from hunter-gathering to farming may have led to a dramatic change in skin tone to make up for a lack of vitamin D. And see, I'm going to keep going. The research paper written with Richard Sedlow, a biophysicist at Brookhaven National Laboratory in New York State, states cold climates and high latitudes will speed up the need for skin lightening. So we got different things going, and just so we can squash this though, it would mean that in a period of history, the ancient inhabitants of Britain and Scandinavia, our ancestors, would have had a dark skin tone. So when we talk about the ancient Europeans too, the ancient Europeans would have been dark skin, black, whatever you want to call it. That's what they would have been. They're going to try to make it seem like they were Mediterranean type people, but they skin tones are recent mutation. The world is black. The Wallam Olom, the forgery. And a lot of people try to pass off the Wallam Olom script as it's true, but you can easily find out that it was a forgery. The Wallam Olom includes a creation myth, a deluge story, which is a flood tale, and a narrative of a series of migrations. Raphaniques and others claim or interpret the migration to have begun in Asia. The Wallam Olom suggests a migration over the Bering Strait took place 3,600 years ago. Not only does it seem unlikely that any record of this migration would have preserved to this day, let alone in writing, but this account is odd with most other Native American origin stories. The typical Native American mythology assumes that people have always lived here or emerged from one or more worlds underneath the earth. Remember that. Emerged from underneath the earth. Come on now. Inner earth civilizations, people talk about it all the time, but these people got stories of it. Who are we to tell them that they're lies? For this reason, many traditionalists, Native American, regard the Asian land bridge migration theory as a fraud. So anybody using this Wallam Olom script, which you can't prove, which this hater made up, he had reasons to make it up. Why he forged it, the fake Olom script. Constantine Samuel Raphanique, whatever his name is, I really don't took care how to pronounce his name, as he is known in Europe, was a 19th century polymath born near Constantinople in the Ottoman Empire. He was self-educated in France. He traveled as a young man in the United States, ultimately settling in Ohio in 1815. He made notable contributions to the study of prehistoric earthworks in North America, so he already know about the Native American. He also contributed to the study of the ancient Mesoamericans' linguistics. Among his theories was that ancestors of Native Americans had migrated by the Bering Strait from Asia to North America. In 1832, this is 17 years after he came to the U.S., he published the paper. He published in this paper, and he discussed the fact, I must have messed that up, discussed the fact that when the Mayan glyphs was broken down to the constituent parts, they were analogs of the ancient Libico-Berber script. But the thing is that you can't even read it. The ancient Libico-Berber script looks like it, but the modern Libico-Berber script, you can't read the ancient Libico-Berber script. So then, like, we can look at the modern day Berber populations and try to throw that onto them and be like, oh, this is the ancient Berber people, but it's not, because you can't use the modern one to decipher the ancient one. And I really hate when people try to use the modern populations as a gauge to what ancient populations look like. You got to tell the whole story. That's like if we lost a little history, and people start thinking that white people in America was native to America, or when white people move to Africa and have kids, we start thinking that they were native to Africa. And we got to be careful with that. Just because you was born somewhere, meaning you was from there. But this is an ancient black migration. They try to make every route to America seem possible, but the closest route, which is from West Africa to Brazil. In Brazil, archaeologists say that stone tools prove that humans reached what is now Brazil as early as 22,000 years ago. Opinion belief that the people first arrived about 13,000 years ago. So we're going to get into some other history now. They said that Clovis first people came 13,000 years ago. People in Brazil, at least 22,000 years ago. This picture was taken by the crew of the HMS Challenger expedition, and this was from 1872 to 76, which is not that long ago, but we can still see the remnants of what was there in Brazil. This is just, I wanted to just show the currents. If we go from the coast of Africa, it's right in Brazil. But they want people to think, boys took this route. Now what they gotta do, take that route. Because this one right here though, it's just a never happened. Africa to Brazil. Duba, a 64-year-old native of Poland, took off from Dakar, capital of West African nation in Senegal, back on October 26th after 98 days, 23 hours, 42 minutes at sea. Duba and his custom 23-foot-long, 39-wide human-powered kayak landed at Acura, a city in Brazil. The trip covered some 3,300 miles in all. That's just about MUSA. MUSA, which a lot of people don't talk about. They're descendants of Bilal in the Quran. And people say Islam was spread through West Africa by the sword, but they say that they're descended from Bilal. And Bilal is their ancestors, and that's how they practice the religion. This man is the richest man in the world, but he inhabited a kingdom that actually made it to America. But Muslim, he was a historian at the time, Al-Umari. He stated that Mansa Musa gave out so much gold that he depressed the value in Egypt. He went on a Hajj, and he took gold with him and handed out so much, just like how you so rich that you could devastate an economy by just handing gold out. Mansa Musa right here, gold nugget, doing it big, B-I-G. West African sailed to the United States, to America. The ruler who, this is Mansa talking to Al-Umari. The ruler who preceded me did not believe that it was impossible to reach the extremities of the ocean that encircles the earth. He wanted to reach the end and was determined to pursue his plan. So he equipped 200 boats. 200 boats. Come on, man. They don't even let you know that your ancestors were seafarers. 200 boats full of men and many others full of gold, water, and provisions sufficient for several years. He ordered the captain not to return until they had reached the other end of the ocean or until he had exhausted all the provisions and water. So they set out on a journey. They were absent for a long period, and at last the boat returned. When they questioned the captain, he replied, "Oh, Prince, we navigated for a long period until we saw the midst of an ocean, a great river, which was flowing massively, a current. My boat was the last one. Others were ahead of me, and they were drowned in a great whirlpool and never came out again. I sailed back to escape this current, but the Sultan would not believe me. He ordered 2,000. So the first time he sent 200 ships, and not Mansa Musa is going to send 2,000 to be prepared and equipped for him and his men, and 1,000 more for water and provision. So that we had 3,200 ships right now in West Africa in medieval time. This is just cultural similarities a cliff dwelling, and this is in West Africa, Mali, and this is in Colorado. How do them people know to build these things is similar to each other? The Moors were medieval Muslims inhabitants of the Maghreb, the Iberian Peninsula, Sicily, Malta, North Africa. The Moors invaded the Iberian Peninsula in 711, tripping, calling the territory Al-Andalus, which at its peak included what today is most of Spain, Portugal. See, we got to remember this Portugal, though. That's why it's so important that early in my presentation, I showed that most of the slave ship was basically to the Portugal areas. And yeah, Portugal did own Brazil, so they could kind of use that to say that that's why so many black people in Brazil. 'Cause I think Brazil is like one of the largest concentration of black people almost on the planet. The discovery of America most commonly refers to Christopher Columbus' 1492 transatlantic maritime expedition, in which he became the first Christian European to make landfall in the Americas. But this is an excerpt from his journal. He says, "Your Highness, as Catholic Christians and princes devoted to the holy Christian faith and the furtherance of its cause, and enemies of the sect of Muhammad and all idolatries and heresy, resolved to send me, Christopher Columbus, to the said regions of India to see the great princes, great khans, and the people and lands, and determine the nature and all other things and the measures to be taken to convert them to our holy faith." So he already letting you know when he going to the new world, he already on his jihad. He converting people because it's still a part of their inquisition, conquest, whatever you want to call it, whatever words they want to put on it. Slavery was all a part of the Inquisition as well. "You ordered that I should not go by land to the east, which is a customary route, but to go by way of the west, a route which to this day we cannot be certain has been taken by anyone else." But we already know Mansa Musa knew how to get there. "According to abstracts of Columbus's law made by Bartolome de la Casa, the purpose of Columbus's third voyage was to test claims that King John II of Portugal canoes had been found which set out from the coast of Guinea, West Africa, and sailed to the west with merchandise, as well as claims of native inhabitants of the Caribbean island of Hispaniola, that from the south and the southeast had come black people whose spears were made of metal called guanine, from which it was found that 32 parts, 18 were gold, 6 silver, and 8 copper." And we even got records of black people trading. Like everybody in this picture not black. Even this guy right here, we could say he got on religious paint, but this guy black. He doesn't even look nothing like him. Got his Jaguar on, bald head, beard. None of them got no beards. And we can see his gold spear, clear gold spear. So it ain't like it was nothing strange. This dude named Jamie FERRER, his quote on the New World: "Conversations I had in the Levant, in those places, it always pleased me to learn from those who came from yonder, from what claim or province they bring the said things, and the most I could learn from the Hindus, Arabs, and Ethiopians is greater parts where valuable things come from, a very high climate where the inhabitants are black." He was a advisor because they thought Christopher Columbus was lying about the stuff that he seen over there. So they had basically got a second opinion on it, and he basically snitched on them. This is the Olmec civilization is a mother civilization, even though we can find civilizations in South America that predate the Olmecs that had advanced civilization too. The Olmecs really have the most preserved, and it's like you can go pinpoint to them that they established right in here. You can go look at their mathematics and science, and you can see that their contribution is more easy to document than the contribution of earlier civilizations and South America, like Peru and Brazil, got the oldest civilization, the oldest human remains, and the oldest signs of people and inhabitants would be in Brazil and Peru. But Peru did have civilization. And this is an Olmec head. This is basically what an Olmecs would have been. The Gulf of Mexico, just camped in there. These are different Olmec heads. And then I'm not a very biased researcher. Not all the Olmec heads do look Negroids. Some of them, you can still see an Asian element, but just because it's an Asian element doesn't mean that it's still not black. These people probably came over here when basically they was passing through over there in that area, and they still had heavy Asian influence, because we got to remember the first Chinese was black. These people migrated out of Africa to these areas. Monuments and structures, the building ability of ancient Native Americans. Where did these people go, though? My question, though. The Bonaparte mural, we can see their phenotypes, see their braids, dreads, see their jaguar, just like King Tut would wear and our brothers in South Africa. The Treaty of 1866, they further agreed that all freedmen who have been liberated by voluntary acts of their former owners or by laws, as well as all free colored persons, all free colored persons who were in the country at the commencement of the rebellion, which is the Civil War, and now reside therein, or who may return within 6 months, and their descendants shall have all rights, not some, shall have all rights of Native Cherokees. The Treaty of 1866 abolished slavery in Indian Territory and adoption of the former slaves and free people of color into 4 of the 5 nations after they rebelled against the United States. Seminoles, they didn't get they got a treaty, but they didn't need a treaty, because I don't think they ever had that problem, which is crazy though, because the Seminoles had been split between black Seminoles and regular Seminoles, when Seminoles is Cimarron, which means wild one or runaway, and it really referred to black people. Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. This is the United Nations. When George W. Bush was the president, he didn't sign it. The United States, Canada, Australia, Great Britain, the colonist nations was the only people in the world who didn't sign the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. Barack Obama in 2008 signed it, but when he announced it, he didn't invite no black people. It was just Mongoloid Indians. And this is about self-determination. Article 3 says that indigenous people had a right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. You got to have that. Article 4, indigenous people, in exercising their right to self-determination, had a right to autonomy, self-government, and the matters relating to their internal and local affairs, as well as ways and means for financing their autonomous functions. We got to have means for getting money to build up our own operation. This is why the United States don't want to sign to it, because it'll ruin them. Article 5, indigenous people had a right to maintain and strengthen their distinct political, legal, economic, social, and cultural institutions while retaining their right to participate fully, if they choose, in the political, economic, social, and cultural life of the state. So we basically have a right to assimilate or not to assimilate. We're not forced to assimilate. Article 6, every indigenous individual has a right to a nationality. So right now, Black Cherokee was kicked out of the tribe if they couldn't prove that they was on a dog's roll list, which don't even prove anything. They was kicked out and denied their right to nationality, and the United States is basically helping them, because they only talking about freedmen, but not all black people were freedmen. Article 13, indigenous people have a right to revitalize, use, develop, and transmit to future generations their history, language, and oral traditions, philosophies, writing system, and literature. Indigenous people have a right without discrimination to the improvement of their economic, social conditions. Like it's just a whole bunch of guidelines, basically laws and rights that we need. Basically, we really need these rights so we can exercise this without getting discriminated on. And when we do get discriminated on, this is an international agreement. We can point it and be like, "Hey, look, look, they're being biased. They're going to go bum other people's countries for human rights violations, but look, they don't really care about our human rights." T versus Ban River. Tribal courts, this is a United States Supreme Court case. Look at the T versus Ban River. Tribal courts deserve full faith and credit since they are the courts of an independent sovereign. However, in order to end confusion, cases that are filed in state and tribal courts require consultation on both sides. So we need courts. Like right now, if you're a national of Mexico or a Mexican citizen and you get in trouble in the United States, they will ask you, do you want to contact your consulate office? When Black people get arrested, it's no contacting no consulate office. You don't get nothing. Like, you basically they prisoner, and it's not how it's supposed to be that, because the European is in a dominant society, so he don't need it. We are a minority, basically with no help. It's not equal. And that's the thing I want people to understand. It's not equal, because if it was equal, Black people would have a place to send their money to. We don't send our money to nowhere. We basically, in America, we are wealthy slaves, but we still slaves because we still don't control nothing. Hispanic people get money and they send it back home. We get money, we send it back to them. A jural society pertaining to the natural and positive right or to the doctrines of rights and obligation as juris relations or pertaining to jurisprudence, juristic, judicial, recognized or sanctioned by positive law, embraced within or covered by the rules and enactment of positive law. Thus, the term jural society is used as a synonym of state, organized political community. So, if we make a jural society, it's basically a state or a political community. But we can start it as a society and build on that locally, all the way to your state, to your nation. But we could do this under a referendum or a plebiscite, an event in which the people of a county, state vote for or against a law that deals with specific issues, a public vote on a particular issue. Right now, they have what they call it, a Brexit vote to get the UK to leave the European Union. And they getting a lot of media attention. But do you think Black people, if they had held a referendum vote, they'll get any media attention? You think people will be on CNN talking about how Black people voting to lead the United States and form their own political body? No, they're going to call you racist. But in closing, my Juneteenth presentation covered the history of these people freed on June 19th. The last people were freed in Galveston, Texas. The last people to get that message that they was free. It happened on King James' birthday, surprisingly, June 19, 1566. King James, who translated the Bible, King of Scotland and King of England, he basically wrote that, translated that Bible. His birthday was on the day that slaves was free. But the lineage of these people who was free composed up of a lot of people, because slavery ended, but it's still a lot of factions of Black people. You have Black Europeans, like Black Dutchmen. You have Black people in the UK. You had Black people in France. You had your Moorish people, Portugal, Spain. These people came to America too. What happened to them? You had free Africans who came to America too. What happened to them? You had free indigenous Black people in America. What happened to them? And you had slaves. The thing is, when slavery ended, they just grouped everybody in together and be like, oh, these are free people. Like, we freed all of them. Like, the only reason Black people was over here because we freed them. like slavery didn't put black people everywhere that they are located at. We got to stop that madness. Like we was there before European. We don't need their help to get to know areas on this map. They babies, man. We've been doing this. 8,000-year-old boats or canoes been found in West Africa. And it's not hard to get from West Africa to Africa. It's not hard at all. If a 96-year-old man could do it, you don't think the richest man to ever exist empire can't do that? We're going to have to leave it up to them to do that for us? But I think with that, family, I'm going to sign off. Peace. I hope y'all and your family have a good Juneteenth. Let's talk about it. Let's not leave it up to them to make Juneteenth a major celebration for us. Juneteenth is our Independence Day, no matter if you're in Texas or not. But peace and blessings, family.